Hello and welcome to Erimus Soccer. As you'll know by now, we analyze games in a little bit of depth, and we're going to do the USA Gold Cup run. And this will include some pretty exciting guests as the tournament goes on. And it does start exciting because we have Caleb Lamb here, a broadcaster out of the Syracuse University School of Journalism, experience in announcing minor league soccer, minor league baseball, hockey, and may I say, one of the finest indoor keepers I have ever played with. Caleb, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, Stu. Very happy to chat a little bit of Copa America 2024
Yeah.
with you. It's been too long.
So I think it has. I think this will be interesting because you are. I get to be less stressed out than I do with the England games with the USA, but I am a pretty avid follower, whereas you're very passionate about it. So this is going to be a good mix of somebody with a lot of skin in the game and someone who is a keen observer who it's not really going to hurt like England's Euro 2024 exit's going to hurt if this run comes to an end.
You're not stressing out as much as you are during a 0-0
Yeah,
draw with Slovenia, are you?
exactly. But we start off with Bolivia. And as an outside observer, we can get into the details later, but I thought the USA fan base reaction to this game, at least online, was shockingly negative. I thought it was a good performance. I thought it was extremely one-sided. It was almost an XG of 3, which is very, very high nowadays. It was 25 plus shots. It was 2-0. Just after the Pepe sub alone, it could have went to 6 or 7 through him. I didn't see the issue, but we'll get to that later on. But let's start at the beginning with the lineup. Matt Turner, back four of Robinson, Ream, Richards, and Scally. Midfield of Reyna, Adams, McKennie, and a front three of Pulisic, Balogun, Weir. So as somebody who watches a lot of USA, but not in the depth you do, there's no surprises to me on this team sheet. What about you?
No, I think obviously there was going to be some discussion about what they were going to look like without Dest being available after he went down injured. So Scally being out wide on the right was maybe the only question mark about how they were going to look there. There's maybe some question marks for me about how I might approach putting together the back four, but this was not a shock. That Greg Berhalter had his team line up this way. This was one that you could have anticipated in the lead up to the game.
Yeah, and Bolivia, the USA 94 World Cup, I was 16 years old. It was my first exposure to American soccer. And if I'm remembering right, one of the first games was Bolivia v Germany. And I was watching very avidly because Middlesbrough had signed Jaime Moreno, who was playing for Bolivia in that tournament up front with Marco Echeverri. And they lost 1-0 to West Germany, who may have actually been the world champions at the time, if I'm remembering correctly.
1990, yep.
Yeah, they've regressed a long way, to be honest with you.
And I think that's where probably some of the disappointment about the result comes from, is because, CONMEBOL is such a crucible of those 10 nations, and just there's so much success when you go down the list. But at the bottom of that list is Bolivia. So when you look at all the teams that are involved in this, you probably, if you're someone who doesn't follow a ton of international soccer or is used to just kind of tuning in for the World Cup, you haven't seen Bolivia in a long time. You're thinking the U.S. should put them to the sword by 4 or 5 goals, which, as we know, is not going to be the case.
Just like Brazil should have done to Costa Rica.
That's right. That's right.
Now, what I think's interesting, and I think a lot of Americans don't realize the progress, and some argue that there was none. If you look at 1994, the US was largely, if I'm right, a domestic team in terms of play being based in America, at least the majority of the squad. And Bolivia probably had more players in Europe. Very much the inversion now. They came up on the screen. 20 of the 26 Bolivians played in the domestic league. You don't see that very often nowadays with South American nations, do you?
No, and you're right about World Cup 94. That this is pre-MLS. So the US national team was a bit of like what a U.S. Olympic sport team would look like 1980 Olympic hockey, Miracle on Ice. That's a group that played together for more than a year in a build-up to that tournament. And so kind of similar, where not all of those players have a club over in Europe that they were playing in. So nowadays, of course, it is completely inverted for the USA. But like some of the other teams in this Copa America tournament, Bolivia may be relatively domestic, but as you're well familiar with, Stu, it's not always pedigree. Sometimes it's that how bad you want it, how much pride you have playing for your country that can lead to results. So
Yeah.
whether or not they're mostly domestic or not, they're showing to be a group that's going to stick together.
I mean, that's a good way to go into the game here because the USA fly out of the gate.
Oh yeah.
They fly out of the gate. Weir drives by a defender. Balogun forces a save in the 3rd minute. They get a corner. Pulisic goes over to take the corner. He's waving his arms to the crowd, getting them all fired up. And then we have a goal pretty soon after. It's a well-worked set. In fact, no, it's this corner. It's a well-worked set play. Weir and Pulisic. And even after the goal, which is a well-hit goal, they're over-celebrating by the bench. Pulisic is picking out the set play, coaching the crowd.
That's
and pointing to them. There is unity. There is passion. It's exciting. It's a high octane start to a game. What were your thoughts of them flying out of the gate like this?
It reminded me so much of the USA versus Ghana in the World Cup. Clint Dempsey scoring 30 seconds in, and just that same lightning dynamic start of clearly this is a team that is full of confidence. They've come in, maybe they've had a good speech in the locker room beforehand from Berhalter to get them fired up. And the way they just attacked, I tell you, I was disappointed Balogun had such a poor first touch on that through pass into the box. He should have scored 45 seconds into the game, let alone in the 3rd minute. Should have been a first minute 1-0 lead.
Well,
but that
Balogun,
just showed the way they started.
It made me smile in the 17th minute because they get another corner and Pulisic is waving his arms again. It's very passionate performance. Yeah. And the ball ends up out wide and Balogun does great. He beats a defender. And then it's wonderful work to get into it. And then he tries some like Rabona that it might have been a cross. It might be a shot. It's not good enough for us to even know which is which. And it's a bit of a $1 million move and a 50-cent finish. But what a start, man. What a start. I thought it was impressive. And I am impressed with Balogun because I'm a Middlesbrough fan. And we had a year of Balogun and Connolly up front. And he didn't
having him on loan from Arsenal, right?
He didn't bad, but he didn't do great. It was like 4 goals in 20-plus games. The season before, Chuba Akpom came in and played 29 and won league MVP. So I think if they're honest with themselves, every Middlesbrough fan was surprised he went and just set fire to the nation of France after his loan spell at Borough. Like the talent was there, the ability was there, but he looked in the cup. We had a cup run that year, and we had games against Tottenham and Man U and Chelsea. And he wasn't really the one that came up big in those games, but obviously that was just part of his evolution. And you can see from this game, I mean, you can say it's only Bolivia all you want, but he looks like a national team centre forward. He looks pretty good.
I think the biggest thing is to remember is how young he and so many of these U.S. Men's national team squad members are still. This is no longer the U.S. team of, someone comes along late in their 20s, maybe 27, 28, and makes an impact. These are kids that have been a part of either this senior squad or one of the under 23, under 17, under 20 squads for many years now. They've had lots of development in this system, and we're seeing how much that the USMNT is reaping the rewards of this development. And it's nice to have someone come over from England's youth system like Balogun has, who has slotted in very nicely.
I think that about Pulisic, though. I mean, he's playing well, and like all stars, we've had the narrative go for and against him and change, and he's had his injuries. But the fact is, this kid started so young and has been so productive and has so long a road in front of him that he's going to push these records and numbers so far out of there that eventually you're just not going to be able to leave him out of any all-time great debate, because he's at 30 goals now, and we've got a long way to go in the story of Christian Pulisic here.
And as there's more friendlies, more Nations League, as there's just more international fixtures, he will, before his career's done, assume the throne and break the tie between Dempsey and Donovan as top U.S. goal scorer of all time. I have no doubt about that.
With a hefty gap like Harry Kane's doing right now.
Yes, yes. But
Um,
Stu, so later on in this game, I mean, a huge start in the USA dominated, should have potentially turned more of those chances and possession in the first 15 minutes to put them away. But they did find that second goal before halftime.
they did. They did. Can I touch on one incident before the
Yes,
goal?
please do. Please do.
It's back to the unity. There was a foul that was a yellow card for a Bolivian, and it was on Reina, and half the USA team is over there, ready for a fight. And I'm watching here, like I won't say neutral because I got a bit of a soft spot for the USA, but I'm like, this team is into it. Like in 61% possession just before the goal, 6-2 shot and advantage. I mean, this is the first game in a major tournament, which most countries associate with nerves. And like you say, what is it, a minute before halftime? Reina gets the ball, Pulisic is between line, he opens on the half turn. This Balogun run peels away from the defender and doesn't go in a straight line. There is a lot of things in this goal that you could write down to the finish across the keeper. You could take a lot of the details of this goal and teach a youth forward and a youth attacking centre mid how to play this game. And we're over celebrating by the bench again. To me, it's a tremendously impressive first half.
If I'm going to be a little picky, I didn't like how wide he sort of was taken away from goal in the box, but you can't say anything negative about the finish. That was
So
picture perfect.
I know what you're
right in the
saying there,
corner.
Caleb, but for me, on a counter attack and a break, you're looking at the gaps between the defenders.
Yep.
And I think the reason he went wide was he had to get outside the far shoulder of the right-sided centre back, or that would have been a very easy angle to close the shot off. So I do think he went wide, but I do think that was purposeful.
I can see that. How many times do we see a counter where it's a 3-on-2, even a 3-on-1, and someone tries to force a pass that's not there and you give up the chance? So I don't have anything necessarily against a team playing a little bit more conservative on that ball into the 18, into the penalty area. But just with how much pressure they were putting on that back line with their speed, especially after you have that first chance to knife right through them in the first 30 seconds of the game. I wanted to see more of that in the first half. That's what I kept looking for. Go direct, beg, force them to try to do something to stop either, sliding in late to commit a penalty, that type of thing, where when you have a defense on the back foot like that, step on their throat and do not let off until you've got a 3 or 4 goal lead.
So we reached halftime, and honestly, all I can think is more of the same. I look at this and it looks like USA are trying to get Weah, Balogun, Pulisic in dangerous positions behind the Bolivian midfield. Too high for the centre-backs to be comfortable to come get them. Face goal and cause problems. Job done. Trying to get the fullbacks forward. Robinson a lot more than Scally, but impressive work there. Did Bolivia get a couple of shots off? Yes, but game is largely in hand. I know people say 2-0 is a dangerous score. I think that's nonsense. And if I'm wrong, find me 1 or 2 examples of the USA being 2-0 up and losing the game. It won't be half as common as you think. We get one change. Musa, who, I thought was impressive, comes on for Adams. And then Bolivia, they make 4 changes. I won't pretend to have great knowledge of these Bolivian individuals, but this is definitely a sign that things aren't going well, right? You can make 5 changes and you make 4 at the halftime break. This is one more factor pointing to the fact that USA are well in control of this game. What are you thinking at halftime?
What I looked at it as was this was the perfect sign of how Bolivia had to adjust their game plan. They very clearly came into this game saying, we need to sit in tight, we need to play in the middle of the field, deal with that 3-man central midfield that has been so dominant in possession for this USA team. When you've got Weston McKennie, who is such a good box-to-box midfielder, Tyler Adams, who is so good at just being able to slide into those passing lanes, disrupt the opponent's attacking flow, and be able to hit on the counter, and then Gio Reyna, who can bring that X factor to your team. that was clearly what Bolivia was focused on stopping. And that meant there was all this room wide on the flanks for the USA to just go at them and overlap with Anthony Robinson. But in the second half, when they swapped to that and they said, all right, we're going to try and deal with the speed a little bit more. We'll try and get wide a little bit more ourselves and prevent them just having, 20-yard runs with the ball to be able to carry down towards the corner and whip balls into the box. The USA was able to adapt to that. I think perhaps, and I think you'll agree with me, Ricardo Pepi coming on suddenly added a whole new element with how he was able to play very much as a target man in the middle. And so now we're trying to send those balls in, maybe over the top as a through ball, or just with more direct crosses in once we get even with the penalty area. And he had some chances, but this is where I might disagree with you, Stu. I was very disappointed with how he played.
I feel like he had 5. Well, let's rewind before Pepe came on to fans claim to want attacking, exciting soccer, right? Like the criticism of England shows that nobody cares that England have let in 1 goal and top the group. It's got to be exciting. Here's some notes of the 6 minutes after kickoff. Robinson charges forward, left-footed left back, bit envious of that as an England fan. Gets a crossing, creates a chance. Robinson shrugged off the ball by the Bolivian sub-Quella. Reina covers. Pulisic carries the ball 40, 50 yards, gets a shot blocked. Richards has a pass picked off, and McKennie receives a yellow card for a foul on Fernandez. Reina finds Weir, shot across goal. Caleb, this is basketball. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This is end-to-end madness. And then in the 53rd minute, and they'd be playing this on Twitter still today if it counted, we have a goal that is slick. It's rightly ruled out by VAR.
Fine margins, though.
Richards finds a checking Balogun breaking 2 lines. A little bit of one-touch interplay. A back heel by Weir to McKennie. McKennie shrugging off Bolivians with his strength. Square, plays in Weir. Weir squares it to Balogun, a goal. Caleb, this is elite. This is like everything everyone on Twitter claims to want. Breaking lines, interplay, one-touch play, back heels in the final third. This is elite. And yeah, he's half a yard offside. Cope. I think this is good soccer.
And this is what the USA does best under this system and with this personnel they've got. They want to be able to hit on the counter. They need space to be able to run at defenders who are isolated and create those chances. I'd say rightfully the USMNT has come in for some criticism in how they break down teams that give 2 banks of 4 in behind the ball and say, come on, come at us. Beat somebody on the dribble when we've got a covering defender there, so you can't just knock it past us and use your speed to accelerate by. But when a team has to come out and has to try to score, like Bolivia had no choice but to do in that second half, it just opens things up for a special player like Pulisic, who can just do so many things when he gets isolated one-on-one. He's almost impossible to stop without scything him down.
I thought he was the best player on the field.
Yep, I agree.
And I think, like I say, he's just in that spot. He's a superstar now. So there's always going to be a section of the fan base that is looking to criticize him and looking to praise the next new thing in the team, right? He's already been through that 2 or 3 times. And I think that makes you forget how young he is and, again, how high these career numbers are going to end up. But I thought he was fantastic. I actually think, as an England fan, there's a lot of similarities in how the 2 teams try to play on the attacking foot. USA just did a better job of it for me. Like, if England had a game where 10, 15, 20 times Phil Foden and Harry Kane get the ball in the spots that Weir and Balogun were getting them, and, you had Luke Shaw overlapping instead of Trippier cutting in, it would look different. Now, different tournaments, different pressure levels,
styles of play.
But, I like a lot of what I've seen from the USA here. And maybe, I always go off social media, but in the 64th minute, the crowd are doing a Mexican wave and everyone looks pretty joyful. So maybe I'm just like reading things and maybe it's not as negative. By the way, you should, when he scores, do the way of when Timmy Weah
The
scored.
way of the way of.
I think that should absolutely be a thing.
I think George Weah is going to haul you off to Liberia for crimes against his son for that terrible pun right there. That's awful.
Yeah.
No, you're right though about some of the criticism, and right now U.S. soccer is, not to go too much off on a tangent here, but it's in that strange place of the game has ballooned in popularity so much over the last decade that you're now welcoming in this large portion of the US sports fan base as a country, which is so incredibly large, but they're not going to follow every single exploit of these players at club level. So some of them are just going to know what they see on the TikTok highlights and things like that. Pulisic, Reina are going to make waves. And then you're going to have the old heads who feel potentially rightfully so that they've been around since the 94 World Cup and they've seen how this organization has developed and they feel like, they're entitled to have more of an opinion other than just, oh, that was a neat play there. Hey, that was a cool highlight goal. They're going to want to see the types of steps forward in the system and the build-up play and just more advanced thoughts on that. And that's going to lead to some friction between those two groups of people who have entirely different focal points as to what they want out of this USMNT.
I mean, and results though, right? Because I think
That's right.
The grievance that at least the 2002 group could have is until you win a World Cup quarterfinal, you haven't done better than us.
That's true.
Until you beat a team who's legitimately top 5 in the world, like Luis Figo's Portugal,
That's
in
right.
a good game, you haven't done better than us. So, I don't know that they are or are not bitter, but I, as an outsider, kind of outsider, see an almost obsession with the latest group of athletes, and this isn't just a soccer thing. This is, to me, a US sports thing. I think they rig the rules to increase the offensive stats deliberately. So there's this constant narrative of the best ever players. I think it's shown through. Think of what a 3,000-yard season used to mean to an NFL quarterback. Irrelevant now.
Sure. Yeah.
A 20, 30-point NBA game used to mean. Irrelevant now. And it's happening in soccer. And I think there's a narrative being painted that they're the best, the best, to the point that we're almost disrespecting that O2 group now.
Oh, for sure.
We're maybe disrespecting the group that made the Copa America semi-final under Klinsmann. Because if this group made the quarterfinal and lost, the reaction would be very different, and we all know it. I think that would bother me, to be honest with you, if I was in that group that made it so. I'd be watching this, and they're talking like every USA win would be something like new ground. If I'm sat there and I've already made the semi, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I did that. Nobody cared, but I did that. I'd be thinking that if I was Brian McBride, seeing the reaction to Balogun. I did that. There's nobody cared back then. So
yeah, it's like when the fan base was disappointed that we didn't beat England 0-0. I'm looking at it, snooze. We've already beaten them 1-0 back in 1950. Old hat, come talk to me when we beat them again for that.
Well, if you want to go that far back, do you know the USA is a World Cup semi-finalist previously?
That's right. That's correct.
Another thing, like we're not forgetting Uruguay's, victories from 50, 60 years ago.
Oh, everyone's forgotten about that.
I will never let you forget England's team in the 60s, but we just never bring up the USA teams that did things before now, and I feel like it's marketing driven.
It's that, and I think it's just a product of where you are in how the game spreads. There are so many people that see a clip on X or on TikTok or on Instagram, or they're seeing the highlights being played, or they're going to YouTube to watch something. You're not just going to see video of those old school tournaments, not just because some of them, not all of the matches were broadcast in the first place, when you're going back to before 1960s, but it's not as there's
a movie about the England game.
That's right. It's just not as exciting to watch 4:3 video when it looks grainy and not as good. But it doesn't mean that this USMNT hasn't played some great soccer. As you said, that 2002 group for me is still the best US team of all time.
Yeah. And I think until we can, move them aside, then you have to win the quarterfinal. I know it's a high bar, but that's the bar that was set. Back to Pepe. As a coach, you're always worried when a guy goes on for 25 minutes as a forward and doesn't touch the ball and doesn't have a chance. So you always lean towards, if he's getting chances and missing them, That's not getting them better than not getting them at all. And that's what I thought in the first three chances. One that went wide of the post, one that was right at the keeper. But we get to chance 4 and chance 5, Caleb, and I still feel like that, but he's starting to test me right now. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, son. Put one in. You play in Texas. Like, it's in Dallas. But
I think I've been a little bit frustrated with Pepe for a while now, just with how he kind of came on. Obviously, he was an eruption in his first few games in a USA jersey. But for me, I haven't seen enough end product, and I'm now getting too used to these types of performances here of great balls in, chances. I mean, obviously, he's done the good work to get into that spot. I'll give a little bit of more credit to how good the crosses into the box were. They picked him out and set the ball up on a platter multiple times.
Robinson
and he's
did,
just
Weir
he's hammering it down the middle. Just direct it to the corner. Stop just putting a laser beam directly at the keeper, who all a goalkeeper is going to do in a point blank situation like that is set up in the center of your mass and spread himself wide. If you put it either side at half of the speed that he's shooting that ball at, it rolls into the corner. So for me, that's some of the frustration thing of, it's not quite to the level, I think, of, say, maybe Belgium fans are getting a little frustrated at this point with how the Euros are going for their team. But he's a similar figure for US.
How I would look at this if I was Berhalter, there'd be some extra reps between the games. There'd be some conversation. But I'd be happy about the impact and the problems he caused in 20-25 minutes of soccer. I would look at it that way.
He was in the right spot to create chances, and it's a game where he didn't put him away, but just as easily could have finished off one of those, and that would have done him a world of good. So
we're going to move on soon to Panama, but if he came off the bench and scored against Panama, I would not be surprised at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
So, review of the game for me: man of the match, Pulisic.
Very impressed
midfield 3. Very impressed with Anthony Robinson.
Yes.
I don't think Richards and Ream had a lot to do.
They didn't have much to do,
so I don't really have an opinion. I wouldn't make any changes going forward based on that. Nobody played their way into benching for me, but what do you think?
No, for me personally, I would have really liked to have seen Miles Robinson start. I'm of the opinion that he's one of the hidden gems on this roster, and he's had injury problems that have kept him out. So this is sort of his chance in a world stage international tournament to put himself in the shop window. Out of all the US players that have gone over across to Europe and are playing in big leagues, he should be playing for a Premier League team. I have no doubt about that. I'm willing to plant my flag on that hill and say Miles Robinson is the most underrated member of the squad right now.
You think he's better than Richards?
I think he's of equivalent skill level. So if he'd been in the starting lineup, I got no problem with that and would love to see him play. But like you said, after a clean sheet performance and a good start, there's no reason to tinker with the back line. Maybe if you go out and you get a second win, you got a third group stage game that's not going to have an impact on you going through. That's the time to bring those players out. But barring an injury or just some kind of horrific performance, I wouldn't expect much to happen in terms of changes to this backline group.
So Panama. Play in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. I know it wasn't a USAA team there, but I still watched the tournament, enjoyed it. Carrasquilla won the tournament MVP, I believe, deservedly so. The goalkeeper Mosquera played well. The wingback Davis played well. They're probably a bit better than Bolivia. They're not as strong as the USA. If I'm doing a very provisional scout, I would say as long as Reina, Musa, Adams, McKennie, whatever combination players can rein Carrasquilla in and don't let him get on the ball and start passing it all over the place and playing in the wing backs and putting us under pressure. I think USA will win. I think Panama played a back 3, if I remember, and back 3s are vulnerable to 4-3-3s with good fullbacks and wingers. So especially that way, a Robinson side could give Panama some real problems.
For me, Stu, the Panama squad this is a totally different team than the unit that made the 2018 World Cup. They've lost so many of the veteran players there. You know, you don't have a Torres who's your well-known player. So very much kind of rebuilding their squad. And they've got a lot of domestic league players in there, kind of similar to Bolivia. The difference for me is how this Panama team approaches the game. That first game, they played a 5-4-1, a back five, and they really hung back against Uruguay. That's not how this team typically likes to play. They love to have possession of the ball. And they didn't do a bad job against Uruguay in that second half. They ticked that number back up to a respectable 45% of the ball, according to the match stats. But it was just how much they got run over in the first half of that game. The Uruguayans were just knifing through them, and they looked a little bit of like a deer in the headlights performance. If they play their game, though, and they go to a 3-4-3 like they've done in the past, to me, that helps the USA. It's like I said, they want a team that's going to come at them, that's going to have some space in the back to potentially exploit. If they stay in a back five, I could see that giving the USA some problems, as they're not particularly great aerially in the box. You're not winning a ton of headers with this group here. You're more trying to get the ball on the floor, get into the penalty area, and rip some good shots. Panama did a good job of blocking things out against Uruguay. Not a ton of talent to worry about, right? But for me, Coco Carrasquilla, who's, like you said, gold ball winner. There's going to be some USA players remember that he scored the penalty that knocked them out of that Gold Cup semifinal last year. The Houston Dynamo man, he should be the guy that they're going to rely on to do something. I would say I'm curious to see how their main center back, who likes to play in the middle, whether it's a back three or a back five, Jose Cordoba, who just got himself a move this month to Norwich City. No idea how they scouted him out of the Bulgarian league, but they liked what they saw for a young guy who's over 6 feet tall, who's plays physically, plays with some pace, and has a good command of that back line. He's going to have a very good game, regardless of what system they play. And the other one that I make a note about is just Maria out on the backside. Murillo, excuse me, who's their only top five league player playing over in France for Marseille. He scored a goal with 10 seconds left in stoppage time to give them a goal against Uruguay, but he's their set piece guy. If he can find a way to get forward and potentially pin back Robinson, who's going to be on his side as a left wing back versus a right wing back, he's going to have a big game tracking him so that the US can't just overrun their position.
Yeah, I mean, this is a spoiler for our next pod, but I think sometimes a 5-4-1 is by design, and sometimes it's a 3-4-3 with your wing back
where everyone just drops. Yeah,
and your wingers covering for them because you're clinging on for dear life.
Yeah,
I think Uruguay's a problem. I think they're going to be a problem for the USA. I do not believe it'll be a knife edge game. I believe USA beat Panama, and I believe a defeat to Uruguay is not terminal. Which is where we need to be, because if you lose this game and you need something from Uruguay, then this is a good team with a very, very good coach, as we all know. So, I expect Robinson and Weir to be a big issue for Panama. I expect a couple of goals. 2-0 again, maybe with a better fan reaction, will be my prediction. What are your thoughts?
I like the scoreline, 2-0, a goal in each half. I think a worse fan reaction to that one, because I think there's going to be a lot more folks who look at it and go, see, it's the same problem. And I think they are going to see a struggle, because to me, if it is 9 players behind the ball for Panama, and you're going to watch the USA sort of crash wave after wave against the breakers, there's going to be some reaction saying, come on, why can't we just take it to this group? Where, again, this is not the USA's strong suit. They need a team to come out and play against them.
I don't know whether or not you're one of those fans, but I'm going to say it to you. Let's give it a week or so, and you're going to play Uruguay, and you're going to find out what problems are.
That's right. That's right.
It is.
Now, Stu, before we go here, we like to have some fun with our discussions that we have had in the past. You always love to give me grief since I'm a Blackpool fan. I love to give you grief just because it's fun to get your goat. So I think we have some fun with some of these episodes of talking about more lighthearted topics. And the easiest one to break the ice in these Copa America podcasts is to talk about favorite, or let's say best, USMNT players of all time. I want to hear your top five. You say we reveal fifth position on down.
That's very
different. We go. Well, we could go favorite because that's perhaps a little bit more of a different list. It certainly is for me, as opposed to the best of all time.
It's a very, very different list. It will be a different list for England. Like my favorite England player ever is Paul Gascoigne. Is he the best? Absolutely not.
Sure.
Absolutely not.
It's your show. I want you
my
choose
favorite USA players.
Go for it. Give me your fifth favorite, and we'll go down the list.
Well, let me get five out, and then we'll order them.
Okay.
But this is my life as someone who grew up in England, moved to the USA, watching from a distance. Alexi Lalas, big fan. Personality.
You like the redhead? Okay.
Nose underdog defender. Find him very entertaining now. Eric Winalda. I find him very intelligent. I think he'd be an excellent coach. I don't know whether or not he wants to coach from his Twitter, but he could do it, and he has some unique perspectives on competition that I like. He also, if I remember right, scored a worldie against Switzerland in the '94 World Cup. A Switzerland team coached, believe it or not, by Roy Hodgson.
I did not know that. Interesting.
After that, it's Brian McBride. He was a very, very good classic English-style target number 9. Clint Dempsey is, I believe, the best American outfielder to play in England. Went on that cup run with Fulham, scored the winner past Juventus in the Europa League. And then it would be Tim Howard. People say Tim Howard failed in England. Tim Howard is, to my belief, the only American to ever make the PFA Best 11. And the PFA award is the most significant one, I believe, in English soccer because it's voted for by the players who played against you. Yeah. And they picked the best player in the position. So everyone playing in the league has said Howard's the best keeper in the league. That is an underrated career milestone. So in order, Dempsey, 1. McBride, 2.
Okay.
Howard, 3. Winalda, 4. Lalas, 5.
All right.
Don't email in or tweet in or comment saying that there's better players. I understand there's better players.
Favorite players, though, is always a different topic.
Probably better, but like they're the ones who I've enjoyed the most and who've moved me.
I'm gonna go fifth on my list. Give me Sharundalo on the right back side, the Hanover 96 man. He runs as well as he dolos, and those are two very different parts of his game. He was such a good, just meat and potatoes right back for so long for those U.S. men's national teams. And every time they tried to get a different player in there, they found that he was more effective. So he had a very long career. Fourth on the list, I want Clint.
Just quickly. He sounds like the third Neville brother. From that description.
Probably plays very, very similar indeed. Yeah. Absolutely. Give me Clint Mathis, number 4. You thought I was going to say Dempsey. Clint Mathis, deep cut, the Mohawk from 2002. That iconic Jack Edwards, the now retired Boston Bruins hockey announcer. Yes, he did the 2002 World Cup for ESPN's coverage in Japan and South Korea. Phenomenal goal that he scored against the hosts. And just, I liked how he played as a central midfielder. Not a very long career. It was a bright flash, but boy, was it bright to look at. Number 3 on that list, give me Brad Friedel. Love me some Brad Friedel. Excellent saves. And you talk about another goalkeeper that some of the new fans, they're not going to know how long of a career he had in England. Played for several different teams. Aston Villa and Blackburn are the ones that jump out to me the most that he played for. Liverpool for a bit. I think Tottenham as well, if I'm not mistaken, as a backup. Second on the list, Landon Donovan. I have a big soft spot. We've had lots of discussions in the past about Landon Donovan over the last decade or so.
Let me say one thing. He's one of the best announcers on this Euro staff.
He's very good.
Landon Donovan and Warren Barton are probably my favorite 2 announcers.
His hair is the worst, but his commentary and analysis, very good. It's spot on often.
Unfortunate, but even the text was funny with Morris Aiden.
I did see that. I did see that was pretty good. But just all the things that Donovan has done, you know, on and off the field. He became the first USA superstar, and he had to carry that torch alone for a long time. And he held up to the criticism, and he delivered so many massive performances in every big game. You talk about that 2002 World Cup. USA without an uncalled handball on the line in the second half would have had a goal to send them to extra time against Germany to potentially go to the semis. And Landon Donovan had an outstanding chance to score in that tournament, if not for one of the best saves that I've seen, just to deny a one-on-one chance there. But of course, that was what Germany was well known for.
Did he win Young Player of the Tournament? I think he won Young Player of the Tournament, you know.
I was too young to remember what the awards were, just how much I enjoyed watching the way that USA team played. Number one on my list, though, might surprise you a little bit, Stu. I'm going with DeMarcus Beasley as my all-time favorite U.S. men's national team. I'd still put him in my top 10 list of the best all-time, but Beasley's so overlooked because he had a lot of injury issues, but he did a job for the U.S. time and time again. 4 World Cup squads, and another one of those guys that every time they wrote him off, they'd go, I don't know what we're going to do for a left-footed, left-sided player. We got to get someone with speed who can put crosses in the box. Put Beasley out there. And he made it work. Started as an attacking player, eventually became a fullback. Long career domestically for Houston, did such a great job, won multiple MLS Cups, but also what he did overseas, playing in Scotland, playing for Manchester City, playing in Germany. The guy was a tremendous, tremendous player. And I think the longevity of career and the fact that I don't think I've seen a single one of his former teammates say a bad thing about him shows his strength of character as well. And I love to watch him take players on.
Currently running a club, Fort Wayne FC in USL2, to my knowledge.
I believe that's correct. I think probably his brother Jamar is probably involved with that too. Another former first overall MLS draft pick.
Right?
Jamar Beasley, New England Revolution. But yeah, and hey, without back before the passive offside was cool, DeMarcus Beasley scoring that 2006 World Cup goal against Italy that didn't count. But boy, imagine if it did count without Buffon having the argument of someone in his eye line. A 2-1 win against the eventual world champions would have taken him to iconic status, and he finished that shot past Buffon with aplomb. One of the only players in the tournament who did put a ball past Buffon, who wasn't Buffon's own teammate.
Run DMB, baby.
That's right. That's right. So I think we got to do this again later on, Stuart, but we're going to have to come back and see how well our predictions for how Panama did hold true.
Awesome. All right. Pleasure
Thanks
talking.
very much for the time, buddy.
Well, for listening.